Yesterday, Secretary of State Christopher appeared to rule out greater involvement in the conflict. He told reporters the U.S. was doing all it can consistent with our national interest.
Judging from what Serbian forces are doing today, it appears they want peace to be a Bosnian government surrender, nothing else.
Bosnia's Army Commander Rasim Delic said he is no longer counting on help from the outside world. America and the other nations act only in their self-interest, he said, but he insisted his men are still willing to go on, and still dangerous, like a wounded animal.
Welcome to Help Bosnia Now. My name's Tom Miller.
My name is Fred Cuny, and I'm a consultant to improve the services to the people of Sarajevo and to Bosnia. There's a lot of black humor going around. Probably the most prevalent joke is the one about what's the difference between Sarajevo and Auschwitz, and that is Auschwitz had
what
gas.
The reality of murder is. This is not war. This is murder. This is a genocide. It's been a genocide going on all throughout Bosnia, and the targets are civilians.
I'll give you a typical day. Just before sunrise, we usually start getting the artillery barrages. The Serbs begin firing down from the hills at random into the city, firing at the areas that are closest to the lines with snipers, machine guns, and so forth. And then from the hillsides, they fire randomly into the downtown area of the city, and periodically will fire up into the upper reaches of the hills. Sometimes they'll concentrate their fire on one or two buildings. Often they'll try and bracket the UN buildings or the areas where people would be going to the UN for assistance or for help. Sarajevo is not going to surrender. It's not going to go down in some sort of a compromise deal. If it goes down, it's going to go down fighting, and it's go down in a fight to the last house. And the Serbs are going to probably have to pay a very high price if they want to do that. Now, they can probably cut off all the supplies, continue to shell for a much longer period of time, create the misery, the deaths, the disease that any besieged city eventually will end up with, and they can do it in the winter to make it especially miserable. But they're not going to force the people of that city to surrender. The army is made up of people who have come from ethnically cleansed areas. They've lost their families, they've lost their friends, they know what it's like to be driven out in shame.
U Bosni i Hercegovini, Sarajevo, i obučavao nas je na svinjama. Uzme svinj, drži je za uši i obor je na zemlji dole. Uzme nož i zakolje. Tako smo mi radili. Ja i Zalo Damlo i Zalo Dragan. Sajno. I oni su mi naredili da ih moram ubiti. Ja sam uzeo nož, uzeo ga zaključ, dole pognuo prema zemlji, prerezao mu vrat. Jedan put. Rekli da moramo ići Soni, u zatvor Soni. Tamo ima žena da siluju radi borbenog morala, za podizanje borbenog morala. I prvi put smo očili Mića Damjanović ođem do da se dole ide.
Koliko imaš u ženi, Jevora?
50.
Mlađa, starija?
25.
Znaš što ime?
Ana.
Bila lijepa, onako kako?
Lijepa. I ja gore smo otišli u sobu na placu, otišao gore sa njom, Miro Vuković. I ključ gore u sobi i otvorio na vrata, evo vrata štočite. I mi smo tu došli, skinuli.
Kako ona reagovala na to, da se opirala?
Opirala se, bio je Mića obuvac spot. Nije mogla ono...
Da pružala otpor?
Jeste.
Kako ste vi to uradili, čuo prije, šta ste radili?
Udarao sam jedno 2-3 puta.
Čime?
Šak. Šamar. I skinuli smo i početi otvara sila.
Welcome to the studio portion of our program tonight, Help Bosnia Now. We have several activists who are involved in work in Bosnia right now. They're local activists, people in the greater Boston area who are doing work for the Bosnian people. I'll introduce them and then we'll have a little discussion. First is Sefer Ozdemir, and I'll just tell everyone people's names, and then I'll ask you to tell me what you do and how involved you are with the process. And this is Karen Kreinheder and Mohamed Berogovic, who is actually from Bosnia. We'll start with Sefer. Could you talk about your involvement with the situation in Bosnia?
I am the chairman of New England Bosnian Relief Committee. We do several things. One is humanitarian organization. Second is to get people involved politically to make a difference, possibly put pressure, show the outcry of the American people to the Clinton administration so that Clinton administration itself will take a step.
Karen, could you talk about your involvement, please?
Sure. I got involved with the New England Bosnia Relief Committee about a year ago. I'd been frustrated at watching the situation develop in Bosnia for the previous year, and then finally hooked up with the NEBRC last April, and I've been working with them in a variety of capacities. We publish a newsletter every couple of months called The Voice of Justice, which just helps inform people about what's going on there and let them know what kinds of things they can do to help out. And I've also been involved through the NEBRC in some gathering of relief supplies to temples in Lexington just this last weekend.
How did you get involved yourself? You said that you were frustrated by what you'd been seeing. Why?
Right.
I think that probably a lot of people who are watching tonight have felt similar things, have felt frustrated by watching the endless stream of images on our TV sets. What really pushed you over the edge into taking action?
Well, I think for me something about the situation in Sarajevo just struck me. Here is this modern, multi-ethnic city which is much like Boston or any other big modern city with people of many different ethnic groups living together peacefully, all of a sudden under siege by, you know, forces from another country. And I just wanted to somehow do something about that, and I had no idea what to do until I heard of the NEBRC last April.
And Mohammed, could you talk about your involvement in
I spent a year in Tuzla. It's in Bosnia, a year of war. And I was a reporter in War Tribune. That was a newspaper of Bosnian army. And I met a lot of Bosnian soldiers. So I know the truth about the war. I just know who is going to win, and I'm explaining to people here that what's the real situation on the battlefield. People are not well informed. Sometimes people connect suffering of Bosnian people with military situation. That's completely opposite. As more our people suffers, our army is better and better motivated. And there is a lot of other paradoxes, a lot of other things that I noticed that people doesn't know here. A lot of people say warring factions, civil war. That is not correct. This is not civil war. This is aggression of a country, Serbia, of a state Serbia against a sovereign state Bosnia and Herzegovina. And without help of Serbia, Bosnian Serbs wouldn't stand a month. So this is aggression, and I'm trying to explain to people here, firstly to friends of Bosnia, who is what's the real truth and what's the real terminology for the war.
We're going to take a short break in just a minute, but before we do that, How did you come to the United States? What brought you to the United States from Bosnia?
My family, my wife and 3 kids were as refugees in Croatia, and I visited them 3 times, and I returned. Last time when I visited them in a refugee camp, started the war between Croats and Bosnians in Herzegovina, so I couldn't return in Bosnia, and it became very dangerous for Bosnians in Croatia when the war between Bosnians and Croats started. My wife had one uncle in California, and he sent us affidavit of relationship, so we arrived in United States. Later, IRC, International Rescue Committee from Boston, accepted us instead of the uncle who died in the meantime. So that was my way to United States.
Okay. When supplies are sent to Bosnia, in addition to sending the supplies, money also has to be sent, because oftentimes the supplies are intercepted by black marketeers. Could one of you talk a little bit about that and what that means in terms of actually getting the help to Bosnia?
That. Yes, I think Mohammed maybe can comment on that better, that I believe some convoys are stopped and some of the items are stolen, and therefore it ends up in the black marketeers, and I don't know the extent of that.
A lot of convoys were stolen from Croats in the beginning of the war.
Have been involved, in gathering the news, and also, as you said, trying to inform people in America about what's really going on in the war in Bosnia. Could you talk a little bit about the contrast between what you actually saw there and, for instance, even some of the images that we saw in the videotapes that preceded the studio session, and what we in America see on the news? What are some of the differences there?
The images are the same, but the comments are very difficult. You see, the situation in Bosnia was very simple. Bosnia is a civil state. 2/3 of Bosnian people voted for independence according to decision of international judgment. Bosnia was a state, and Bosnia got independence, and then Bosnia was attacked from Serbia, and that was in the resolution of Security Council 757. It's clearly stated Bosnia is a victim, Serbia, Montenegro are aggressors, and that's why the Serbia has got economic sanctions, then blockade. Then Serbia was excluded from United Nations and excluded from European organizations, never got recognition. So the process of punishing Serbia was ongoing, and then our president accepted negotiations. He accepted to negotiate with Karadzic, who is a leader of Bosnian Serbs. So that was the first, on my opinion, mistake. So everybody said he accepts a Karadzic as the party in war. So this is a civil war. And then everything started badly. The punishing of Serbia stopped, and everybody started to use the formulation. The Bosnian Serbs, not no more Serbian army. Now there is a Bosnians. There are Bosnian Serbs and Bosnian Croats and Bosnian Muslims. And this produced complete confusion. You see, the clear situation, the Bosnian victim, Serbia is aggressor, now looks like a very confused situation of civil war. But this is not the truth. Really, despite of negotiations, this is aggression. So I think this should hear the people who make news in CNN, and they should go back on previous formulations, this is aggression against a sovereign country.
And so in some ways it sort of disentangles some of the information that we have received, because certainly in the United States there are people of all different religions, people of all different ethnic backgrounds who live together, and really that has been the case in Bosnia as well.
Yes.
We actually have a phone call now. Hello, you're on the air.
Yes, hello, this is Peter calling, and I'd just like to say I think this is a wonderful show, and I really appreciate the fact that it's on the air and that Scott has put this all together. I have a specific question, if I could, for the guests. I just heard today on the radio that there's a dispute between France and the U.S. over what policy should be taken by the United States vis-a-vis this entire situation, and I was wondering if anybody would care to address that specifically, or more generally, what the American policy should be, maybe in relation to some of the other European countries, where people feel that responsibility lies for the Americans versus the Germans or the French or other European countries.
Is France correct in wanting to do what they want to do? I think they also still want to divide Bosnia in ethnic lines, and Christopher wants otherwise, and correctly so. He doesn't want that to be. It should be the case, just because of the fact that Bosnia-Herzegovina is a country. It's a country recognized by United Nations on May 22, 1992, as an independent country, and therefore an independent country, because of aggression coming from outside, shouldn't be divided. I mean, in any given country, we call this aggression, or the people who make these aggression are separatists or nationalists or fascists. The government of Bosnia-Herzegovina to the level of those separatists, and therefore we are starting to call them as warring factions, when in fact it is the separatists, the nationalists fighting against the government of Bosnia-Herzegovina.
We're going to continue with some of the discussion that we were just having. Karen, perhaps you can continue along the lines that we were talking about, just in terms of the international situation and the way countries are dealing with what's going on in Bosnia.
Right. Mohammed was just mentioning during the break that, you know, the United States really does have an interest there, in the sense that we are setting a precedent here in Bosnia of allowing a small, in the Serbian nationalists who've decided to invade and essentially wipe out a neighboring country because of ethnic differences, to go ahead and do it. And that's a very dangerous precedent to set in the world today, to say, okay, if you've got, you know, a neighbor that you don't like because they're ethnically different from yourselves, just go ahead, invade the country, drive people out, call it ethnic cleansing, it's really genocide, go ahead and do it and nobody's going to stop you. And, you know, with the breakup of the Soviet Union and that whole area of the world, this is setting a precedent of saying hatred is okay, I think. And I think that a clear message ought to be sent that that's just not acceptable.
There have been parallels drawn between what's happened in Bosnia and what happened with Iraq and Kuwait, when the Iraqis invaded Kuwait, and the United States took very quick military action in that instance. Could you talk to some extent about why it might be that in this instance the United States, for whatever reason, as well as the European countries, is not getting more involved when they have been able to form partnerships to get involved in other global situations?
I would like to answer on this. This is a crucial question. This is really the most important issue. You see, there is each conflict can be solved on two ways. One way is by judgment, and another way is by negotiations. You see, and the solution of Bosnian conflict started on the first way. Security Council started to punish Serbs, point by point. When the negotiations started, then this way of punishing Serbs stopped. The negotiations are the reason. By means of negotiations, each American action was stopped. I read a lot of newspapers. Each time when people here couldn't look at these terrible atrocities and American administration decided to do something, Serbian friends, they just said, you cannot bomb Serbs, you cannot lift the arm embargo because you will stop the peace process. This was always the argument. So if all friends of Bosnia, if they want really to help Bosnia, they should make a pressure to stop this peace process, because this is not a peace process, this is just protecting of murders.
During the Bush administration, we talked about the right thing to do, the moral thing to do in Iraq's versus Kuwait case. There was an aggressor, Iraq, and a victim, Kuwait.
Mm-hmm.
So we went there to help the victim and get the aggressor out of there. Was it that, or was it oil? Here, we don't have that. There is no oil in Bosnia-Herzegovina, obviously, and if there is an economical interest, very little. But there is an aggressor, though. There is a clear aggressor, and that's Serbia and Serbian nationalists. So then one could say it is still a moral issue. So why aren't we doing it? So why aren't we taking action? Why isn't Europe taking an action? So these are good questions, and I hope that we all can all come up with good answers. But we have to do it quick. We have to come up with good answers and set policies. The Clinton administration has to set policies and move on it. Otherwise, some other countries, such as France, as one of the callers pointed out, is trying to take the lead to bring out solutions to Bosnia-Herzegovina conflict. And therefore, who's the superpower here? Is France or some other country who will come up, or Russia maybe, because what Russia is saying is going. They want to help Serbia and they want Serbia to win, and that's what's happening. So who's the superpower here? Who's the loser here, the Russia or the United States? So let's take our place. I think we have to find answers and take our place here as a superpower.
The people who are being hurt in Bosnia, the people who are being killed, are innocent victims. They're people like us. And I think that that's something that, even though there certainly are differences between what happened in the Holocaust and what's happening in Bosnia, there are some similarities. And I think that we can learn something from looking at some of the similarities. Karen, as an American and someone who's involved in this activism, I wonder, had you been involved in other activism before, or have you
I was involved in, during the Vietnam War, I was involved in activities to try to stop that conflict at the time, and I haven't been involved in political issues, quote unquote, since then so much, but other types of volunteer activities, Salvation Army, volunteer work, whatever. But this brought me back into a more international, active political position. And it's also, just a personal comment, one of the really wonderful things for me in working on this is to see how many different sorts of people have come together to work on this issue, working with these two temples in Lexington, and the NEBRC has Muslim, Jews, Christians, whatever, working in it, and it's like a multi-ethnic group working for a multi-ethnic society in Bosnia, which has been great.
Would you want to tell, you have this medium now, what would you want to tell people in America about what's happened and what people in Bosnia feel about people outside of Bosnia, how people in Bosnia are feeling about America and Europe? And
well, I would like to say that the Bosnian people need not a peace. Bosnian people need a justice. You see, if somebody comes in your house with a rifle and take your house, then you don't need a peace. You need to do something to have your house back, you see. So Bosnian people need justice. That's why we need stop negotiations, judgment to those who who made a genocide, who repeated concentration camps, who organized mass killing, mass rapes. This is what Bosnian people need. This is my message. And what was the second part of your question?
Just about how people in Bosnia feel about people from other countries now, because there's been a lot of talk about waiting.
The people in Bosnia used to say for themselves, it seems to us we are the only normal people in the neighborhood, because there is so many nationalism in the neighborhood. And still in Bosnia people live together. You see, Serbs took 60% of Bosnian territory, but more than 60% of people is still under, and all resources is still under the control of regular Bosnian army, and there is no concentration camps in this part. Serbs, Croats, Muslims, Bosnians, Yugoslavs, Jews, everybody live together. They work together, and they are like normal people. And in the neighborhood are just some fascist regimes in Croatia and Serbia, and they see the similarity between United States and Bosnia, because here everybody lives in the same house, live so many races, like in the Bosnia. So the people in Bosnia would like, they expect United States to help them, because United States can understand that it's possible to live together in the same building, even if you are different race.
Just in closing, I'd like to give each of the opportunity to just say anything that you might have wanted to say, but we just haven't had the chance to talk about it yet.
There's I guess a conference you'd call it, called The Untold Stories of Bosnia, where Stephen Walker is going to be speaking. He's one of a number of American diplomats who have resigned in protest of the lack of a U.S. policy over Bosnia. And also a young woman, Yasmina who is a Bosnian refugee, is speaking there also, and that's from 7 to 9 the evening of February 3rd at the Tremont House on Tremont Street. And you do need to reserve a place at that for anyone who's interested in going.
But he wants to help to Bosnia. He shouldn't say warring fraction. There is always legal Bosnian government, and there are rebels, and there are soldiers from countries that committed aggression against Bosnia. So this is the precise terminology. Sometimes I can hear Muslim-led government. Does somebody say Protestant-led government in United States? You see, and the very important thing, Alija Izetbegovic, he is not a president of Bosnia and Herzegovina. He's just one out of 7 members of presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And so you cannot say Muslim-led government because Izetbegovic is the president of presidency. The power resides in a presidency. So, and in a presidency there are 2 Muslims, 2 Croats, 2 Serbs, and 1 Yugoslav. Ganic is a Yugoslav. He declared like he doesn't feel as, and he felt as member of as citizen of former Yugoslavia. So this is not a Muslim-led government. So this is Serbian terminology, and just this terminology won because of negotiations, because our president accepted to negotiate with Karadzic. Our presidency didn't accept, but he accepted to negotiate with Karadzic, so it made a situation unclear. But even the situation is unclear diplomatically. In fact, this is aggression, and who wants to help to Bosnia should always say aggression against the Bosnia, not civil war. This is not civil war.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to all of you for coming on tonight and sharing some of the information that you have, some of the feelings that you have, and letting our viewers know about some of the things that they can do if they do want to take action and to try to help the people who are in Bosnia. Thank you to everyone at SCAT, where the show has been produced, and we will be coming to a close now. Again, if you are interested in getting involved, stay tuned for the phone numbers for New England Bosnian Relief Committee and also some of the events that will be coming up. Thank you very much and good night.